So I'm surfing today. When you're surfing, for people that don't know, you have to keep your surfboard at the side of you because if you keep it in front of you, you have to, like, it'll knock you over if a wave comes. So I get up from a wave because I go under a wave, and I get up and I stand up, and immediately after that, the surfboard is right in front of me. And as I'm standing up, see another huge wave barreling at me. And I say, oh fuck. I had just enough time to say that. And then just get absolutely clobbered by this like 4 to 5 foot wave. Just comes at me. My my board hits me. I go tumbling backwards. I do a somersault. You know how long it's been since I've been able to do a somersault? Did a somersault in the water, inhaled more water, salt water, than I would care to admit, had it in my ears, had it in my eyes, had it in my nose, had it in my mouth. Absolutely disgusting. Got up from this experience, had to go sit on the beach for a solid 20 minutes just to rethink my life choices. Is surfing really what I want to do?
Naomi, like the first day of surf school, I think the lesson is you do not show the water any fear. It can smell fear on you. As soon as you accepted your fate, it knew it could just proceed and knock the shit out of you.
No, so my roommate right now is teaching me how to surf, and so she's like sitting next to me in the car, and she's like, "So what are your goals for today?" And I open my mouth and I say, "I'm about to say something." She goes, "You're wrong. We have no goals right now. You should not have goals."
That's very sweet. I'll just end and note that the last time I was in California, I was in Los Angeles and visited a beach with RJ, and there was just a dead sea lion decaying on the side. So there's like a decent chance you absorbed some like dead sea lion through your mouth today. I'm
I
sorry.
think I
Every
I
time
think
you drink
I
ocean water, you get a little bit of dead sea lion.
I think I heard that like the vast majority of American beaches are polluted by like human excrement. So, take that as you will.
Or microplastics. Welcome back to Why Will No One
Date this guy.
Date These Guys? It's a podcast where we used to discuss all sorts of things involving relationships, and now we mostly just talk about one book. But we're getting closer, God damn it! We are getting closer. We are like in the last 15% of my 178-page outline. We're doing really good.
We
I feel I
are.
deserve some kudos.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know this is episode like 14 or 15 at this point, but like, we're gonna make it, Naomi. We are gonna make it after all. And I swear to you, the last two chapters are impossibly short. It's like not as short as chapter one, but like of similar length. Chapter six is the only one where he was like, I'm gonna write a bunch of stuff and it's all gonna be wrong. Naomi, before I have you summarize what we talked about in the first part of Chapter 7, I do want to introduce one of the most messed up sodas I have seen on store shelves. And this wasn't even like at a novelty soda shop, this was at my friendly neighborhood Fry's. It is a seasonal soda from Jones Soda, who I think we've tried before on this podcast. And it is Hatch chili flavored. Now,
Ew.
I'm a fan of Hatch chilies. I love the seasonal taste of Hatch chilies. I've made some incredible dishes with Hatch chilies recently. Um, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this soda. Maybe I'm not the target audience. It smells like chili. Like, you know, when you like sniff a soda and you get like the fresh like lemon scent of like a Mountain Dew or Sprite, or like a very intense herbal note from like a nice root beer. This smells just like carbonated chilies.
Ew.
And the worst part is I kind of know what carbonated chilies smell like because I bought a bunch of Hat chilies and then didn't use them all, so they started to rot in the bottom of my fridge. So like, let's give it a shot.
Why would you say it like that? Why would you say rotting chilies are carbonated chilies?
I kind of like this.
Ew,
This is
Joel.
not bad.
Ew.
It's kind of like it is like a carbonated chili, but it's like, you know how you have cucumber water and you like put slices of cucumber in? This is
Yeah.
very much like you just like dipped a pepper in water up and down and then carbonated it. It's kind of refreshing. Like this would make like a good, almost like a margarita mocktail or something, having like a spicy base. I could see it also being like mixed into a Bloody Mary and having like tomato and then like some pepper notes at the back. This is actually pretty tight.
I'm
Like
really
I am not joking. I am enjoying
I'm
this.
really worried about your taste in mocktails if that's what you think is good.
Naomi, I'm going to drink this whole thing over the course of this podcast. What's even worse is like it was friend of the show RJ's birthday this week, and I did send him an Arizona gift basket. I just got a bunch of like local goods, prickly pear jam and local honey, and I
Oh,
found one of these on store shelves and sent it over. He has not told me if he's tasted it yet, and I'm going to presume he never will, and that is his loss.
damn.
Hey
Harsh.
Naomi, moving on, what did we talk about in the first part of chapter 7?
We talked about how women are a waste of time and how there's certain commodities that men need to have. And we didn't quite touch on the last couple of commodities that men should have, but I think there's big three. And the big three are money, time, and energy. And that's all I remember.
I don't know if he phrased it as like commodities. I think it was more of like these are things you possess and you need to make sure you're not wasting them on women. And
Period,
he
King.
was like, yeah, you wouldn't want to like waste your life with a woman who's just going to leave you for a man because women are notorious for sleeping around. And then we ended because I pulled some stats which were like, actually, men are more likely to report multiple partners. So if someone's going to leave someone else and sleep around in a relationship, it's probably going to be men, which is a cultural stereotype that's pretty common. Yeah, when you think about serial cheaters, I don't think your immediate mental image is woman, unless maybe you spend all day listening to right wing podcasts and talking about how women are ethos and whores. That's HOORS, as Danny DeVito pronounces it in Always Sunny. Whores. So, with that, let us jump back into chapter 7. We left off in the middle of two things he wanted us to know. I think the first thing that he cited in the previous episode was that women are horrendous about communication because it turns out that women used to experience domestic violence, which is a fact that kind of
Yeah.
dispels everything he said previously in the book. And the second thing he wants you to know is perhaps even stupider than the first statement in terms of his overall argument. So he goes on and says, the second thing to know is one of the key tenets of Buddhism, that desire is the source of all suffering. In desiring women, men pin their happiness and contentment on attaining one. But as any young man standing experience will tell you, she's not yours, it's just your turn. That's a quote. She's not yours, it's just your turn. Meaning you are pinning your happiness on something fleeting and outside your control. This doesn't mean you should somehow eliminate your desire for women. You can't, it's hardwired into you. But your desire should be tempered by reality. So when, not if, she starts acting up, ghosting, flaking, or otherwise, you are not confused. You're not overly emotionally invested, nor do you have any unrealistic hopes or dreams for a future that can be dashed. You calmly and stoically accept that she has moved on into the relationship with minimal psychological energy wasted over an outcome you didn't control, simply because you never invested that much energy in the first place. A woman needs to prove herself to you before you care. Only invest your energy once she does so. What do we think?
So I recently heard this thing that this woman was talking about. She's like, why do men go after women that have different like relationship goals from them? Because you hear all too often like men basically trick women into, sleeping with them and then they'll just leave these women. Apparently, this is one man's perspective. The reason why that happens is because and they don't just go after women that want casual sex just as they do. It's the chase is better when they're getting that, it's funner when they're getting that. Funner is not a word. It's more fun when they're getting that sense of, oh, I accomplished something because I like persuaded her to sleep with me even though she only wants a relationship. And since I persuaded her to sleep with me just because of outside of a relationship. So you wonder why women don't invest their, time, energy, all these things into men. It's for this reason. That's in
I mean,
heteronormative
I think it's
relationships.
probably something like, the pleasure chemical in your brain, which is mostly produced when you experience novelty, not things you've done 1,000 times before. So there is like a sense of like seeking new experiences and new relationships. But I think it also is that culturally, a lot of men associate like success and like being desired as being someone who's like slept with a lot of women. and like is sexually desired by a lot of women. And so whether or not like they're interested in a relationship, they probably feel like some degree of obligation to try to up their body count as much as possible to prove to themselves or to other people in their social circle that they're like sexually desirable. Yeah, I think that definitely plays a role. Um, I think this is interesting because he's like, hey, you really shouldn't put any of your energy into women, which is I think the second time he said some variation of this, and then doesn't give any guidance for how you accurately assess whether or not a woman is into you. Um, as we talked about last time, if you're going to say something like this, you should probably give like clear signs and indications that a woman might be into you, you know. And I'm not even saying any of that information would be accurate. I'm just saying he doesn't even go out of his way to try to provide even a fake version of like easily identifying a woman who's into you. And that's probably because he isn't smart enough to figure out those signals, or alternatively, again, he's just trying to reach his word count and he's rushing through this as quickly as possible. The second thing was he's adopted a very bad take on Buddhist thought here, and I think it's worth talking about why this is wrong. How familiar are you with like tenets of Buddhism?
Not very. I was like confused on why he brought up Buddhist thought, and I was very confused by that.
I was kind of into Buddhism when I was younger. Buddhism talks a lot about like the nature of the world, and one of the main tenets of Buddhism is that like the world is suffering, and like you have to kind of mentally progress past desiring different elements of the world in order to achieve a form of enlightenment and peace with the world around you. Um, and yeah, it's unfortunately kind of related both with tech bro culture. There's a lot of tech bros out there who like have this idea of like minimalism and like getting rid of all the bad stuff in their life, and like the world is bad and we can use like venture capital to solve stuff. But then it's also like sometimes used by like snooty intellectuals who want to pretend that they're like smarter than other people because they're not Christian, they're Buddhist, and that's different, and that's weird. And I think to a certain extent it also ties into people who are like really into Asian culture, where it's like, oh, I've discovered the best part of Asian culture, the spiritual enlightenment part. It's not just the women and the anime schoolgirls.
Ew.
But the reason I bring this up is because, like, as someone who's read a lot of Buddhist texts, not just like original Buddhist texts that have been translated, but also like people talking about Buddhist texts, I immediately picked up that his interpretation of this was wrong. And I want to talk a little bit about why that's the case. So, the quote he uses is, he says one of the key tenets of Buddhism is that desire is the source of all suffering, and says that in desiring women, men pin their happiness and contentment on attaining one. But this interpretation indicates that all desire is bad and the root of suffering. But pretty much any normal discussion of Buddhism that I've seen says that they mean desire for physical things like material objects. Like, a Buddhist would not say desiring world peace is bad, or that desiring other people to be happy isn't bad. In the same way, Buddhism doesn't say that physical love is bad, just that it needs certain elements to not lead to pain. Right? And like Buddhist thought has been around for a while. There've been a lot of people who've like discussed Buddhist thought and how to like to understand it in our modern world. So like even a basic Google search would have revealed this. Well, what does a basic Google search reveal? Well, there was an article from the Thick, boy, I'm going to butcher this, Thickenhathanon Foundation. It was an article on February 7th of 2018 titled, "Does Buddhism Support Romantic Love?" So it says specifically the first element in loving kindness or maitra. Sorry, let me back up. In the teaching of the Buddha, true love needs four elements. The first element is loving kindness or maitra, which means the capacity to offer happiness. In romantic love, if you are not able to help the other person be happy, that is not true love. You should train yourself to be able to offer happiness to yourself and the other person. Without that, both will suffer. Interesting. The second element of true love is compassion or karuna. Compassion is the kind of energy that can help remove suffering and help transform suffering in yourself and the other person. If you cannot transform and take care of the suffering in you and in the other person, that is not true love. That is why karuna shall be cultivated by both people. Romantic or not romantic, that is not what is important. What is important is if it is true love or not true love. The third element is joy or mudita. If you make the other person cry all the time and you cry all the time, that is not true love, regardless if it is romantic or not romantic. And then the fourth element of true love is inclusiveness, or upeksha. This means you do not exclude. His suffering is your suffering, and her happiness is your happiness. There is no individual suffering anymore. In true love, there's an element of non-discrimination, no separation. In that spirit, you cannot say, that's your problem. No, your problem is my problem. My suffering is your suffering. That is the fourth element of true love. What do you think about that and how Aaron interprets love?
What's interesting based off of our new view, just I was taking it as like our view of love and non-toxic love and what we're getting to on social media, and I feel like my suffering and your suffering is like very toxic, I feel like, and I hate putting that label on it, but they might I might have misinterpreted it, but it's just yeah. I don't like that.
I know. I think you're coming at it definitely from like a TikTok perspective. I think explicitly what they're talking about is in a relationship, if you see your partner is experiencing pain, you shouldn't be like deal with it yourself. You should be like, we're in a relationship through the thick and the thin. We are here for one another. I am here to help you overcome obstacles. I am here to help you with your problems. And so when they say your suffering is my suffering, it should be don't let your partner suffer alone.
Yeah.
You are here to assist them. That is what it means to be in a like relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can interpret some of this in like different ways. I think it's interesting that they use like male and female pronouns, and I think that has to do with like Buddhism embracing like a lot of dichotomies in their understanding of the world.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of Buddhists who'd be like, "Oh yeah, gay relationships are fine," but like I think a lot of traditional Buddhism is like, "Well, you need like the male and the female in order to achieve balance." But yeah, no, I think it's really good when they talk about the idea that like you need to be able to offer happiness to other people. You need to explicitly want them to be happy. You need to care about that other person, and both people should be focusing on that. You should not attempt to take away happiness from other people. Um, it's interesting to me because nothing like that is discussed in the old contract model. He's embracing Buddhism now, or at least like some I read two sentences of a Buddhist text interpretation of it and pretending he's more like knowledgeable. But when he talks about the old contract is like very much a formula. Resources are put in, sex comes out. Right? I give you, $50, you give me children, or however else you want to talk about it. He like explicitly compares relationships under the old contract to prostitution. Like this is a recurring theme in the text. And yet here he is like misinterpreting Buddhism, and Buddhism's like, no, relationships should be for the benefit of both parties. Both parties should emotionally nurture one another. Both parties should be supportive. Why would you want to have a relationship with someone if you did not care genuinely for them and want them to be as happy as possible? So, my point here is when he talks about the old contract is thus not about supporting your partner, it's about extracting everything you can from them. The old contract, in his mind, is men getting as much sex or as many children as they want from the woman, and the woman sucking up as much money and resources from the man. And that helps explain a lot of like where he's coming from in this chapter. Because he cannot imagine relationships where women genuinely care for men and men genuinely care for women. Like that is antithetical to his worldview. Aaron's response to changes in society, such as what he calls the new contract, is not for people to become better to their partners, and I mostly mean men in this instance, is to retreat even further from the qualities that define a good relationship under Buddhism while embracing a kind of anti-consumer mindset to fill the void left by having no one to commit yourself to. Right? Like he was literally just talking about like not focusing on material possessions like fancy watches and cars the last time we got together. Like this Buddhist thought is clearly like underpinning a lot of the chapter. So rather than like trying to be better and get away from the things that cause suffering, he's just creating a new form of suffering under Buddhism. It's this monastic lifestyle where you sock away all of your savings and commit yourself to no one until you die. He has not found a cure for suffering. He has literally just created a new one. And once again, this is why this book is so fucked up. Because not only is it like a bad book for women, it's a bad book for men who like have bought into this and think this is going to make them happy. This is a bad book for everyone involved. And I'm really afraid that so many people who have read this, who have left 4.8 5-star reviews online, haven't picked up on any of
Do
this.
you think
They're like, oh, he says I shouldn't buy the watch, and that's going to be the secret to my happiness.
do you think that women pick up this book and they leave 4.5 5-star reviews?
I think I saw a couple of people who identified as women on Amazon. I don't know if they were real women or men pretending to be women, but like they said, like I bought this from my boyfriend and then I read it and now we're happier. I do think there are people who find some degree of contentment in like the trad wife aesthetic. However, like I've been reading recently some juicy drama about like trad wife influencers who are like married to Mormon men who cheated on them, and now they have nothing because they had no savings, they had no assets, they don't even have a good community because they spent all their time at home, and their husband has now left them to sleep with someone younger and even more gullible than they were.
All I'm
And
saying
it's like,
all I'm saying is I am the head of the Tradwife community as Tradwife McGee. So bow down, bitches.
mm, I am so sorry. I have forgotten. We do this for 14 fucking episodes. You forget who you are. And that's
Exactly.
me. I'm Richard Biggington,
I thought
Dick
I was I
Biggington
thought I was
Sr.
Big Boober or something, and you changed my name to Tradwife McGee.
I did make the creative decision. I didn't know if I wanted boob on any of our like podcast covers. We still gotta be family friendly despite all the swearing. So he goes on, and now he's going to talk about some policies and rules you have to follow. So maybe he's going to give you some really good advice. I don't know. In an effort to protect your resources and consequently your life, it is good to have a couple of rules or policies to follow. Not sure why I had to clarify that. Not necessarily because having discipline is a virtue, but having rules helps you make good decisions when your thoughts or emotions are compromised to the point you're about to make some really bad ones. And it's safe to say most of men's really bad decisions revolve around girls. We could come up with a limitless number of do's and don'ts rules, like don't marry, don't date single moms, never pay for a girl's student loans, etc. Yes, do that. Give us something to work with and critique. But it's better to follow an overall philosophy that addresses every situation you'll run into as opposed to one off instances. And the best way to do this is to approach women from a cost benefit analysis where you lay out all the information you have in front of you so you can make a reasoned, rational, and above all else, unemotional decision. And what you'll find is being this disciplined will not cost you much in terms of success, but it'll definitely save you a ton of resources when it comes to losses. There are 5 rules or questions you should ask before you commit any resources towards your pursuit of a woman. Naomi, I want you to listen closely and tell me if this like will help men solve their problem of spending too much money on women who are going to leave them for Dick Biggington next weekend. The first question is, who is my beneficiary? The second is, what are my costs? The third is, what are my opportunity costs? The fourth is, what is the realistic chance of a return on my investment? And the final one is, when I consider all the above, is this worth it?
He really said,
In asking
no,
who
no,
is
no, no. He really said, is there an ROI on this woman?
He literally said, "Is there an ROI on this woman?" And I keep talking about and making fun of like big business and capitalism and venture capital throughout this, but there are insidious links between this mindset of like growth at any cost and like LinkedIn influencers trying to be your best life, lift yourself
Yeah.
up by your bootstraps, be your own boss, and conservative ideology. Like, I'm not saying there's 100% overlap, but there's very close connections between like the misogyny of the right wing movement and the misogyny of like demanding that people pull themselves out of poverty. They're similar sides of a coin. So he says, in asking who is the beneficiary, you're trying to figure out who is really going to benefit from your investment. Be honest with yourself. While your intention to get with a girl is obviously for your own benefit, 9 times out of 10, it'll be the girl who benefits from your expense, or perhaps no one benefits at all. But it still comes at your expense. A perfect example is one every young man faces today: rent. Rent is stupidly expensive. But to get laid, there's a huge push for men to rent their own place so they're not living at home. But think about that. You're going to spend $2,000 a month just to prepare for the chance to bring a girl home one night. And not just $2,000 a month, but $2,000 a month for years and years on end. In the end, you will blow $240,000 in 10 years on rent, which is enough to finance a retirement.
I actually agree with him on something. He says rent is expensive. Oh my
Oh my
god.
god. Oh my.
We agree.
Well, no, I think we've talked about this before, but it's the same premise as like Fight Club, right? Like in the book Fight Club and in the movie Fight Club, one of the like takeaways you can derive from this like weird, perverse masculinity ritual of like beating the shit out of each other is people can be easily influenced into believing things by having like very simple premises taken to a logical extreme. And so that's why people like him and Jordan Peterson are dangerous, because they start with obvious things like rent is expensive. There are problems in the dating market. Some people are unhappy. And then they like build upon that conclusion by conclusion until it's like, never talk to a lady. Every lady wants your money. They will murder you and then go marry Big Dick McGee, Jason Momoa, Democrat. The world's falling into chaos because the women invaders are destroying the foundations of democracy, right? It all starts from this place of pointing and saying there's something wrong with the world and then coming up with all these horrifying ways to like fix it. It's just like innovation. It's just like entrepreneurship. You're like, I found a problem. How am I going to solve this problem? For some people, it's Uber. For other people, it's all women should die.
Yeah, but
Yay!
Joel, the differences between this and entrepreneurship, there's probably a lot less coke.
Can't afford Coke when you're sacking away your money for retirement. Um, so regarding the questions, Naomi, I think you're right that the questions are kind of bullshit. You're basically writing a business plan like every single time you have to deal with anything in a relationship with someone,
Yeah.
right? You're like, okay, should I pay for her ice cream? Okay, who is the beneficiary? Well, I guess it's me and it's her because we both get tasty ice cream. And then what's the second part? What are my costs? Well, ice cream's kind of expensive. It's like $5 a cone. Oh, I don't know if I can afford that. I have to save for retirement starting now in order to retire at age whatever, $240,000 in the bank. What are my opportunity costs? Well, I could be grinding at work, right? Rather than spending an hour with her, I could be at the gym, min maxing and getting swole, or swiping on like hot chicks and like doing that thing Joel suggested where you work out and do your dating stuff simultaneously. Yeah, this is not how people, this is not helpful. Having like explicit rules for dates would be so much more helpful, but he didn't want to write all of that. So he's just like, I know business stuff. I'm an economist. I used to have a blog, ladies. Captain Capitalism understands. Oh my god, it is that, right? It's just that he's an economist and he thinks this is how the world
Yeah,
works.
but the difference is now he doesn't have to blog about it and he doesn't have to have it on a floppy disk. I'm sorry, a
Yeah.
CD.
Now, all of this is stupid, but like perhaps the most absurd is that last line: "You will blow $240,000 in 10 years on rent, which is enough to finance a retirement." In esta economica, ay ay ay.
Maybe if you're living on the side of the road, it'll
Maybe
help.
if you're living with parents, not in a rental house. That's big
Maybe
brain thinking.
if you're living in Kentucky, I heard of someone paying for a three-bedroom for $650 a month.
Yeah, but like the jobs there pay like 40,000 a year, so
$650 a month.
yes, and the amount of money you can make from your career is much lower. There are trade offs. There's a reason people live in places like the Bay Area. There's high paying jobs there. But let's talk about retirement, Naomi. Believe it or not, $240,000 is not enough to retire on.
No shit.
Citizensbank.com had an article titled "How Much Money Do You Need to Retire?" They estimate that if you were to retire right now, experts think you'll need 1.5 to 1.8 million dollars. That's right now, today. Not in 30 years, not in 50 years. 1.5, 1.8 million dollars. I'm going to assume when most people reading this retire, they'll need 3 million, 3.5, 4 million,
Yeah.
somewhere in there, because inflation's a jerk. $240,000 won't get you anything. Second, believe it or not, a lot of parents kick their kids out when they turn 18. I wasn't able to find any like exact stats, especially because this seems like a very sore subject that parents would not like talk about, but it's not zero. Like a lot of people don't have the option of living with their parents. And again, I have to wonder Aaron's background where he's like, "Oh, I used to live with my parents." He doesn't say this, I'm going to presume this, but he's like, clearly other people have the option too of living with their parents. Some parents might be nice, some people might give you this option, but like not a guarantee everyone has. A lot of people come from bad homes. Also, here's the thing: rent is pretty expensive, even in February of 2023 when this book was published. So he says $2,000 a month. Well, rentcafe.com talks about the average rent and market trends across the country. Per their site, the average rent in the United States is $1,700 a month, but it ranges wildly depending on the region you're living in. California average is 2506 a month for 850 square feet. To Naomi's point, you could pay as low as like 957 a month, but then you'd have to live in Oklahoma. The reason I bring this up is rent is high in most of the places people go to meet attractive people. Like, if you're a man who wants to date, like, smoking hot city babes, like, you move to places where there are lots of women. San Francisco is one of those places. I think I last read it was like a 60-40 gender ratio or something. Um, but, like, people go to places like Oklahoma, they're not going to find a lot of women who, like, fit all the criteria they have for like perfect 10, beach blonde, body by Zeus, blue eyes, all that shit.
You'll find a lot of
But also they're
porn.
probably going to have very different values out in Oklahoma women than
Yeah.
like a lot of men would want to deal with. I don't know how much premarital sex you're getting if you go to the Bible Belt. Maybe a lot. I could be, but like I think probably less than a lot of people with more liberal attitudes in
Is
cities.
Oklahoma in the Bible Belt?
The Bible Belt holds up America's pants, Naomi.
Yeah,
It
but
stretches
Oklahoma's
across
like
most of our fair
in the
nation.
middle.
I think Oklahoma's part of the Bible Belt. It's a pretty conservative
We'll
state.
discuss
I'm not.
this
Don't
later.
quote me. No one listen to our podcast and do a sociology paper on like the influence of religion in Oklahoma. That's not what we're here for.
Oh,
Um, so he goes on and he says, this isn't to say men should be living at home until they're 30. Oh, thank God. There are other reasons to move out on your own. But especially when you're younger and just starting out, wait to sign a 12-month lease at $2,000 a month. Rent a hotel room on the rare occasion you get laid. The only person benefiting otherwise is the landlord. The next question you need to ask is, what are my costs? And not just in terms of money, but also in terms of time and energy. Here you will rarely find something that costs you just money. Say you decide to buy a girl some flowers. There's the explicit cash expense, but there's also the time you had to work up for the money to buy them, not to mention the 30 minutes it took you to go to the florist and buy them. Ay, ay, ay. In esta economic. I'm going to stop saying that.
I just can't believe that he's sitting here and he's saying, in the rare occasion that you get laid.
Hey, Naomi, if a guy invites you to their hotel room, do you think he's trying to be attractive or do you think he's trying to hide you from his wife?
Has anybody ever heard of that story? I'm asking this as a question to the audience of four people that we have. Um, has anyone heard of that story of that woman going to a hotel and being carried out in pieces in a suitcase because she was literally slaughtered by a man who she went into a hotel room with?
Yeah, I mean, we're not venturing into true crime if that's where you're trying to take this. And he's like, it's time for a spinoff. Why will no one date these guys? Because they're all
I'm not
murderers.
trying to say anything about true crime. I'm just saying that is how I'm answering your question. I'm answering it with another question.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well played. Well played.
Thank you.
Um, so he's like, well, flowers, they cost money, but also time. And once again, the idea of multitasking is just completely foreign to him. Like, I'm going to assume most men go grocery shopping like on a weekly basis. Are you really telling me you can't go to your local Kroger and pick up your whey protein and, I don't know, broccoli and
Chicken.
cauliflower rice and chicken breast? Yeah. And you can't also spend 10 seconds to like meander over to the flowers, which are often at the entrance as you walk in, and pick a bouquet from the discount rack and like peel that sticker off and present it to your girl. Yeah, this is the whole swipe on people at the gym. The idea that you could like save time is foreign to him. Or he's just trying to exaggerate this to illustrate that like pursuing women is a lose-lose situation. But anyone who thinks about this for more than a moment is going to be like, it's not really that difficult, bud. Or say, Naomi, you help a girl with her homework. It might not cost you money, but it definitely costs you hours of your time. Or perhaps you're on a date. There are explicit cash costs, the 3 hours of your life you're never getting back, but there's also the mental energy you must expend, tolerating her dull and stupid conversation about her going nowhere nonprofit career. To this, I'd just say, we don't need to dwell on it, but like, it is fascinating to me how little Aaron wants to give in exchange for sex. he thinks women owe him something, but also isn't willing to give them even a smidgen of fake respect on the off chance they may put out. He is offended by the idea that women want their humanity respected by their partners, and can't even tell men to pretend to put up with this. Like, this man does not want to bang women. He wants a sex doll. He wants a sex doll that will ask nothing of him. But he also wants the sex doll for free. Like, he wants to, like, rummage through a dumpster and find it and be like, yes, didn't spend any of my precious money. There were no costs or opportunity costs associated with this transaction. I am the only beneficiary in this situation.
He didn't take away from his retirement fund when purchasing this doll.
Yeah, because, over at Sleazy Sam's Sex Toys, you can get all sorts of fun stuff by rummaging through their dumpster. Or you can go through their used shelf.
Yeah, we're done here. We're done.
Yeah, I don't know. We're done here. What's shocking when you add up all these small things is just how much women cost you in terms of time, money, and energy. Everything from doing favors for women, going on dates, buying them things, just enduring a stupid woman's painful conversation. Sorry, he says dumb woman's, my bad. Is a death by 1,000 cuts price you'll pay. This is on par with a man paying for a divorce settlement. Always be acutely aware of what you're paying for in terms of time, money, and energy, no matter how small the transaction is. Then there are opportunity costs. Specifically, what could I have done with my time, money, or energy otherwise? And this is the true cost to men. There is the $6.9 million figure from Aaron Clary's The Book of Numbers that estimates the true opportunity cost men pay for their pursuit of women. Can you believe that? I could have $7 million if I hadn't bothered to date my fiance.
You'd have 2 retirement funds.
Oh my god, you're right. Yeah. That's interesting. He should be like, that's 7 million. That's let's see, 4 times 7, 28 retirement funds you could get with that at $240,000 retirement fund. I got good news, Naomi. Remember how I said last time I read 2 other books by Aaron Clary for this podcast?
I thought it
Well,
was
Book
only
of
one.
Numbers was one of them, as I mentioned. And I read that specifically to dig into his claim about $6.9 million.
Okay.
Because that's a bold claim. And he's an economist, so clearly he has, like, the facts and the stats and the figures to back it up. Like, I'm willing to accept that, like, if you took all the money you would normally spend on dates and, like, put it in a bank account, you get something out of it. But I was like, well, how does he justify this? Well, let's take a look-see. So, Book of Numbers, page 91, talks about opportunity costs. Oh, that's a familiar theme. He says, ask yourself a simple question. Even though you may not be married to some middle-aged 50-year-old right now, how many of you would go back in time to tell your 18-year-old self to spend less time chasing girls, spend that time instead working more and making money, and taking said money and investing it in the S&P 500? And even though you might not know the precise math of it, it's pretty much a guarantee every man reading this book, let alone every man in the world, wishes that he could tell his younger self to have done precisely that. Invest more in himself, less in women, and park the savings in a market. This opportunity cost is theoretical. Neither you, nor I, nor most men in the world have the wisdom or maturity to stop wasting money chasing girls and invest it instead in the stock market. But it is still a price we paid, and that if we did not chase women, the resulting savings would technically have gone somewhere, some of which may be into a S&P 500 S&P 500 indexed fund. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. And though we could debate that, we would have very likely frittered away on video games or travel to attach a price tag to the opportunity we forfeited. Theoretically, parking said savings in the SPF 500 is a very logical and financially sound assumption. And so had you taken the $260,000 you spent chasing women, invested it instead in the S&P 500 index. He claims earlier in the book that you would spend $260,000 over your lifetime, like, spending it on relationship stuff. It's funny too because it's all elements of the relationship, from dating women to all the dates you have to take your dumb wife out on once you're married to keep her happy. So it's like, it's an interesting stat. So he says, take this $260,000, invest it instead in the SP 500, starting at 18, with an inflation-adjusted 8.64% return per year, until you live the average male life expectancy of 79 years. You would have $9.685 million. $9.4 million more than $260,000 you spent chasing girls. That $9.4 million is your opportunity cost in chasing women. Though, if you avoid a divorce, this drops down to only $6.9 million. Wow. Wow, 9.7 million even if you hadn't even like married a woman. 6.9 if you did and had to divorce her. That's wow. That's so much money, Naomi. Um Yeah, this is one of the worst calculations he's done. His great advice is an entirely theoretical exercise that has no basis in reality. What's more, the math doesn't even work. So, according to him, you're supposed to have a spare $260,000 lying around at age 18. You're gonna like go to the bank and be like, excuse me, sir, I don't plan to ever date a woman. Can I borrow against all that money I would have spent and put into the bank right now? And I'm going to go invest it in the S&P 500. Okay? Is that okay with you, sir? Don't know where you're getting this money. Maybe you have rich parents like Aaron. But that's what he says you should do. You do that, and after 43 years, you end up with $9.2 million. See, I ran the math, and he says that if you lived until the age of 79, you would have 9.6. I did the math and found that 43 years after age 18, you would end up with 9.2. 44 years gets you to nearly 10 million. So you get to retire peacefully at the ripe old age of 61, assuming, of course, you had the foresight to be born into a rich family. Now, for context, I have a Roth IRA, a retirement pension fund, and a 457k fund. I am making pretty darn good money for someone my age, above average, I would say. I've been putting away approximately 10% of my income into all three of those accounts since I was 17, and I still have yet to crack even 150k in assets. I probably won't even hit 260k until age 32 or 33. 43 years from then is 76, 2 years away from 78, the average lifespan of men. That means I would get a good 2 good years with that amount of money, and that's for someone with a decent middle class lifestyle. So again, like his great secret to success, his great way you achieve financial independence and live your best life is by having $260,000 lying around at age 18. And then you're wealthy enough, you don't have to do anything with it. You can just shove it in the market and forget about it for 43 years. But, I mean, even a more realistic example, you really don't get anywhere close to that until, like, you've been working for most of your life, and then you get to retire and die very quickly. So this is not a good example. This is, I would say, a bad example. And then you can look at actual numbers that make it even worse. So other people who aren't me have similar problems. Fortune.com has an article titled Gen Z's Average Net Worth and How They Approach Money Differently from Their Parents. It was by B. Ivana Pino, October 19th of 2022. Fortune claims in this article the median net worth of Gen Z is about 14K. I don't know if that's accurate. It's probably still not that for people who happen to be black in America or women or trans individuals, but whatever. If you put $14,000 right now as a Gen Z person into the bank for 44 years, you would get $500,000 out. Not quite $9 million, but close, I guess. Fortune also noticed that the only group whose median net worth crosses $260,000 right now is people between the ages of 65 and 74. So the only people who could actually do this thought experiment are people in their 60s or later, not people at age 18. The only people right now in America who could do this are senior citizens, and they do not have 44 years to wait putting money into the market. Let alone, assuming that like 8.64% is a reasonable return rate. We've talked about this already, but like presuming that the economy is just going to keep expanding eternally is a really bad premise, especially for someone who's an economist and knows about things like the environment that might cause problems for supply chains in a few years. So bringing this back, his argument is that men miss out on $9 million by choosing not to invest $260,000 they don't have at 18 years old and waiting to use it for 44 years. This is a situation basically no one in the world could do, and one so impractical and ludicrous, you have to wonder if his entire lifestyle of blogging and arguing with people via CD was funded by rich parents, and he thus thinks everyone has the same opportunities. I have no proof of this. I couldn't find anything on his parents, though I didn't look particularly hard. But seriously, how else would someone come to these absurd conclusions? Give me some other scenarios.
I'm just confused on how you didn't find $240,000 in our couch cushions. Like, I've already done this. I already have a retirement plan, Joel. Come on.
Oh my god. Damn, that's where the Guy family gold is hidden, in the
Yeah.
couch cushions the
Yeah.
entire time. Wow. You ever see Arrested Development? Okay, there's a running gag where the show follows this like very wealthy family, and they own a bunch of real estate, they own a bunch of businesses, but like they also run this like rinky dink banana stand that sells frozen bananas dipped in chocolate. And it's like the side hustle they've been doing for years, and like it's brought up in a lot of episodes. And whenever like the main character Michael is complaining about finances, his father is always like, "Well, there's always money in the banana stand," and he's like, "But it doesn't make us any money. Like it's this rinky dink shack." And he's like, "There's always money in the banana stand." And like you make a lot of money, you make a lot of profit off of like dipping a banana in chocolate,
Yeah.
selling it for, $5 or whatever. But like it never really makes sense. And Michael eventually decides that like this banana stand was like a symbol of like everything that was wrong with his childhood. Like he was reminded about how his parents made him work in this banana stand and miss out on like summer vacation and doing things with his friend. So in order to bond with his son, he burns it down one day. And he goes to his dad and he's like, I finally took it out, like the source of everything that I've hated. I finally like done something. And his dad's like, "What did you do?" He's like, "I burned down the banana stand." He's like, "I told you there's always money in the banana stand." And what he meant was that he had lined the walls with like tens of millions of dollars, and it was like inside the banana stand. And so yeah, that's the Guy family. Please don't tear apart our house looking for the Guy family gold. You're not going to find it. I've already tried. Naomi, we're going to finish this chapter.
Okay.
I promise you this. When it comes to individual instances of choosing to spend resources on a girl, you must calculate what you could do with those resources otherwise individually. A girl wants you to come to her birthday party at a nightclub. Fuck that. That's 4 hours of your time, $20 in cover charges, $40 in gifts, $20 in drinks, $10 in parking, and 3 hours of mental pain, tolerating loud music, all to watch her soak up attention and not fuck you at the end of the night anyways. What could you have done instead with those 4 hours and $90? You could have worked and made another $100 instead. So here he is back to the Rise and Grind set, telling everyone that they should just work rather than ever doing anything that makes you happy. This is the whole like industrial machine being more important than human civilization and being happy and all that. One fun thing that I pulled from CBS News is that 41% of U.S. workers are salaried. Most people don't have this as an option. Most people who aren't making, most people who aren't are not making $25 an hour for 4 hours of work, especially if you're living in a place like Oklahoma to save on rent, per his advice. I also think a lot of hourly workers don't have this opportunity. Most hourly workers don't get to dictate their own schedule. You can't just go into McDonald's and be like, "I'm working these hours this week." No, your boss tells you what hours you work. You can request sometimes to have a different schedule, but like, this is not the perspective of someone who's done menial labor. This is the perspective of someone with rich parents. Call me crazy. He goes on, says you could have chilled at home or with your buddies. You could have studied and improved your skills, which boosts your wages. To this, I'd say we do not live in a meritocracy. You don't automatically get a raise at work because you got a new certificate. This is the perspective of someone who has not ever had a real job. Just because you study does not mean your employer is going to reward you with anything. Anyone who has done like training at work will find that like you get a flat rate bonus at the end of the year in most jobs, if anything at all. Or your boss is like, if you went out on a date with me, I could promote you to manager, which is probably an experience a lot of women have had, but he clearly hasn't talked to a lot of women when writing this book, so it's not a perspective he would have included. You could have repaired your car. You could have just taken that money and treated yourself to an exquisite meal you never would have afforded anyways. The real point here is just how much men dramatically underestimate themselves and what they can achieve in life. Take a look outside and look at everything, Naomi, that has been built, invented, created, and manufactured. That was created by men. God damn it. What do you think?
I think that's
Did
bullshit.
men create everything? Did they build, invent everything in civilization?
No, you literally hear all the time about like women inventing things, women coming up with ideas, and then men taking like the credit for it.
You think you're so smart. Name 5 women. Can't. See? Told you.
Wait, let me do it. Mary Curie, Beyonce, Michelle Obama, me, Lauren Pauls. or LP.
Yeah, name a single woman who invented something. Mary Curie discovered something. That's not the same thing. She didn't invent uranium. Come on, you got to do better than that. Um, you might be onto something there, because it turns out women have invented a couple of things. Unfortunately, this is probably not history that's discussed in a lot of U.S. classrooms. This is history where like you would probably have to like read a book or two and do something that was not in a US curriculum to find this, but it's pretty accessible, believe it or not. So BuzzFeed.com, pardon me, but it was a good article, had a listicle titled Fantastic Inventions Created by Women. These include life rafts, dishwashers, Kevlar, disposable diapers, one-handed medical syringes, submarine telescopes, electric water heaters, globes, solar stoves, solar heaters, feeding tubes, windshield wipers, pedal trash cans, compilers, circular saws, ice cream makers, invisible glass, fire escapes, car heaters, and of course, chocolate chip cookies. I really think, Naomi, we need to do an episode on the accomplishments of famous historical women, because this is like a pretty common like right wing talking point about how like women have done shit. I want to harken back to that episode we were talking about the U.S. Census, where like a big thing is the census just didn't record if women had jobs up until 1920s, I think it was pretty late.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could also imagine that like there's a lot of inventions throughout human history that were just stolen by men, or like literally the patent office wouldn't allow a woman to submit an application, and so like these are the ones we know about and have like documentary evidence for. I'm sure there are thousands of others. But yeah, so this is a topic no one really knows anything about. Unfortunately, this allows right wing people to kind of make ridiculous claims like this. Keep in mind, many women's inventions were stolen by husbands or men they work with, so this is an incomplete list, but there were some examples of people like Lisa Meitner, who discovered nuclear fission in Germany in the 1930s, but had to flee the country because she was Jewish. Her lab partner, Otto Hahn, took the credit there. Rosalind Franklin was the first person to identify DNA as a double helix structure, but two people named Watson and Crick took the credit on that one. Nettie Stevens was the first to identify chromosomes as the determinant of gender, but another colleague published similar work first. Her work was more detailed and explained more, but he got the first person there credit. So yeah, this is like a recurring pattern throughout Western civilization. I'm sure it happens in other cultures too. But yeah, women have invented a shit ton of basic things that make life easier. They should not be discounted nearly so easily. Um, Now I feel angry. Damn. Let's wrap this up. Now this doesn't mean you, young man, are the next Andrew Carnegie or the next Bill Gates, but it does mean you could be a senior software engineer or CPA, or a man who has his house paid off. But all of that assumes you're smart enough to invest in yourself instead of frivolously chasing some thought at a nightclub. This is kind of like pyramid scheme talk. It's like, well, you're not a sucker, are you? Because I wouldn't want to do business with a sucker, right? Only a smart man would identify this offer of me selling you a timeshare is the best way to invest their money. Yeah, this is him just trying to con people. The next question is an unemotional one. What is the realistic chance of return on your investment? Or more specifically, does this girl really like you? Here you need to be completely honest with yourself and not ask what you'd like, but ask what is. And again, here would be a really good opportunity to explain how you determine whether or not a girl really likes you, but either he doesn't know or didn't want to include it. The truth is, most men are somehow negotiating, cajoling, convincing, or otherwise tooth pulling a girl to like him. I would agree with that. It is arduous, frustrating, vexing, and an all round pain in the ass. And the reason why is that deep down inside, most girls aren't into most guys. This results in several common situations that nearly every man is familiar with. Examples are the disinterested girl who sits there on dates and expects you to do all the entertaining and talking, the girl you're texting who occasionally responds to texts, but lackadaisically so, the girl who agrees to go on a date with you only to flake at the last minute, or the girl you finally get back to your place only for her to sheepishly say she doesn't want to have sex, but it's okay if you cuddle. Here it pays to follow the axiom of Rollo Tomasi: desire cannot be negotiated. And then he like does an in-text citation. Rolly Tomasi, the rational male. Do you agree, Naomi? I kind of agree with this idea that like most women are not into most men, but it's not because like most women are vapid. It's because most men are like sociopaths who are like, will this woman have opportunity costs for me? Will buying flowers prevent me from impressing old man Jenkins at the office? Oh no.
I don't know, some of the shit that he says makes sense for like a sentence and then he explains what he actually means and you're just like, "Oh dear god."
Yeah, he's like he's trying to show 2 plus 2 equals 4, and he gets the right answer, but like he's like 2 plus 2, so you divide by 0, you multiply by infinity, you square root all of that, you divide that by 0 again, and and then he like covers up the board and does some scribbling behind it. He's like equals 4. See, I got it. Proof positive. So, like, his first the first thing that's worth mentioning is that once again, and I keep saying this, but his argument is falling apart here. Like 3 pages ago, he told his readers that you should temper your desires and not let your compulsion to pursue women dominate your life. But here he's like, well, you're gonna do all of this anyways, and like women are like gonna manipulate you. So can you control your desire? Do you have any ability to regulate your emotions? It's a minor point, but like not one that like an edited book would even have people asking about. Second, if men don't want to expend resources on women before women have proven themselves somehow dependable, why is it then so crazy that women also want to ease into relationships? Why is it so bad that women want to cuddle before having sex? Isn't he opposed to the idea of women sleeping around, or is it only when it's sleeping around but not with him? But like, let's think about this. If he's like, you need to ease your way into relationships in order to prove that like a woman really likes you, and women are like, what if we ease into relationships to figure out if this man isn't a sociopath, like if he really likes you? It seems like both parties are following his advice, but he doesn't like that. He wants a woman to just throw all caution to the wind and be like, I'm ready to put out on date number 1 because you're the man for me, and I'm an ethot who puts out for men who spend money on flowers, I think. Third, he's using a Rollo Tomasi quote here. I don't know if you noticed, but this is a Rollo Tomasi quote, Naomi. It's from a book written by Rollo Tomasi, who's an author who wrote a book called The Rational Male, written by Rollo Tomasi. Rollo wrote a bit about this on his blog. That's Rollo's blog, Rollo Tomasi's blog, and says that you actually can't convince people to want to do things. You can only make it more likely that they'll do the thing. His example is that if you don't do any housework and your wife stops having sex with you, you can't start doing dishes again and expect that she'll ever want to have sex with you again. She might be more willing to have sex with you, but she'll never want to have sex again. Which, A, says a lot about how he views chore gaps in relationships, B, might indicate the issue in the relationship isn't the dishes, and C, doesn't really make sense. The reason I say this is because you can negotiate desire. Lauren, for instance, my significant other, doesn't want to kiss me when I haven't showered after working out. But that doesn't mean she wants to break up with me. It means she wants me to take a shower, right? Me taking a shower is negotiation that restores desire. Basically, all relationship psychologists agree that relationships go through periods of ups and downs. Maybe some are worse than others, but it doesn't mean that every single relationship ends when someone gains a little weight or falls into depression. Right? Are you with me with that?
I agree with what you're saying, but I definitely think that Lauren just wants to break up with you and she doesn't know how to tell you. She's just like, "Oh, he's so smelly after he
Shit.
works out."
Yeah. You tell me. If she was telling you that, you'd tell me, right?
Sure.
All women are evil and manipulative. I should have been at the office today instead of recording this podcast. Old man Jenkins. Old man Jenkins. He'll give me the company when he dies. I know it. I've worked really hard and gained all the certificates, so clearly he's going to promote me one of these days. Right? Right? So yeah, this is a mishmash of poorly thought out ideas. It's all garbage. We approach the end. I promise you that. A girl either likes you or doesn't, and it is critically important you accurately ascertain that about every woman you're interested in. Because if you don't, the eternal hope and optimism that is your male sex drive will assume she does, forcing you to piss away an incredible amount of time, money, and energy on a girl who doesn't. I may be renaming my genitals to the eternal hope and optimism. I feel that's a pretty good name. Um, It's like women who get the booty shorts that say "this machine kills fascists" or something similar. Um, I don't know. I find it amusing. So you should be honest with yourself. You should critically and honestly ask yourself, does this girl really like me? And if she doesn't, do not try to convince her otherwise. Accept that she doesn't like you and move on to a girl who does. That girl will ensure your investments aren't wasted. Then the final question you need to ask yourself is, after all of that, is all of this worth it? Weirdly enough, I kind of agree with this part because you can't logic someone into a relationship. I don't think men should come at relationships with the idea that all women are puzzle boxes that just need to be solved. Like you need to put in like the right resources, the right jokes, or like talk to her with like specific negging language. The thing is, it's the same repeat of our prior stuff where it's like the way he gets to this point is so ass backwards and convoluted that I don't think anyone's actually who's reading this in good faith is going to pick up on it. Right? Right? Right, Naomi?
Sure.
Okay, Naomi's dead. We need to get her in
No,
bed
I
sometimes now.
can't. Every time I do this in these episodes, I'm just sit here and I'm just like, why?
One last paragraph, Naomi. When you assemble the unemotional facts and lay them out empirically before you, is what you're paying and giving up worth what you're likely to get? And while your heart or your hormones may want one thing, you need to use your brain to answer this question. If you're honest with yourself, most of the time you will conclude that it is not worth the investment. 9 times out of 10, your efforts in pursuing women are usually just a waste of time, and you're better off investing those resources into yourself. But this doesn't mean you're going to have any less success. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite. Because what you're really doing is cutting your losses. And in cutting your losses, you will ensure you save the resources for yourself. And you'll be amazed what kind of man you'll be if you reinvest those resources into you. A man so amazing, you'll be shocked with how much more success you'll have with women. Reserve those resources for women who deserve them. It cannot be said enough. You deserve more. Women deserve.
Less.
Ding, 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 ding. Beautiful. He really brought it home. He really slammed that ball out of the park.
I want to summarize.
Can you add some intonation this time? Last time you were like, yeah.
Basically,
Give it to me, Naomi.
Aaron says that you should stop wasting your time on women. You should get laid every so often by women that you don't care about. I think he's pushing you to get your own sex doll, preferably for free, so that you can invest the rest of that money into your retirement. Stop wasting time on women, stop wasting money on women, and instead invest money into yourself for your retirement. But then again, he doesn't talk about what he's going to do in his retirement when he has all this sudden free time and all this money.
Get a really nice, exquisite meal and hang out with your homies.
Is this the Steve Harvey world where you just sit on a lazy boy and watch football in
Shit.
Vegas?
You know, we didn't give Steve Harvey credit for how much of a dick he wasn't. Like, he was a huge dick and, like,
Yeah.
very off base, but, like, we've seen worse. I did want to kind of tie it back to the main themes of the overall book. I will say for this chapter, Aaron finally brings it all home, saying that women have had it far too good for far too long. Last chapter, he described all the benefits that women get that they've squandered and used that to justify men not spending any money or resources on them. Now he's trying to argue that all the benefits men get by focusing on themselves, but then does so in such a stupid, unwarranted, unhelpful way that like no one's going to learn anything. His advice basically boils down to, in my mind, not every woman is going to like you, so don't waste your time pursuing women who are indifferent to your existence. That's his big, brilliant insight. But behind what could be a useful message to men about like living life to your fullest is a huge heap of bad assumptions, bad advice, clear misogyny, and general disregard for basic human emotions that people usually need to conduct themselves in society. Not only is this book demeaning to women, it's also not empowering for men. He has this like rah-rah speech about how important it is to empower yourself and live life to the fullest, but it also assumes that men have all these resources that they just don't. It's not a useful call to action if no one can actually follow the call. This is more disempowering than anything. If the advice that you're giving to men is that they're not working hard enough on themselves and that they have no one to blame for their failure but themselves wasting time doing things that give them pleasure, how does that actually help them? How have you built tools that actually help men free themselves from the prison you've said society built around them? It seems far more likely to me that a man reading this is going to lash out against women who feel they have had it far too good for far too long. rather than turning inwards and focusing on themselves, like Keep It Purdy suggests. We all have this like cultural understanding of like incels and what incels are. Incels don't usually get into Tai Chi and like stomach crunches. They usually start hurting women. When you paint the world as created entirely by men and women as wanting to enslave men and take it all to themselves, what do you actually think is going to happen? I'm not sure he realizes what he's done because critical thinking doesn't seem like a skill he possesses, but I think the damage is there nonetheless. May God help us all. May God strike him down, so help me.
Well, audience, in the wise words of Lauren Paul, I'm gonna wrap this up because we take way too long in our exits.
We need to figure out like a way to like end these episodes. I'm almost thinking like getting like one of those 1950s like my wife joke books about like how women all suck and like men need to club them,
The old
and
ball
like
and
like
chain.
reading like yeah like reading a joke from those every episode or something. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts?
I think that we should end it right here. Tell everyone to go get tested and make sure that you're not mm, getting pregnant and raising a man like Aaron Clary.
Good point.
Abortions
Um,
exist for a reason.
if I've been reading a lot from like the R teachers subreddit, and a lot of teachers are like deeply afraid for the future young men out there. They hear a lot of shit like this being repeated by
Yeah,
young men on the regular.
yeah.
And
Joel, no. We are finishing this episode. We are exiting. In Lauren Paul's words, we need
okay,
to finish this. This could be your anecdote for next episode. We love you all.
fellas,
Don't
we got
be
2 chapters
Aaron.
left. Hang in there. We're gonna make it.
We love you all. Have a great week. Goodbye.
Big kisses. We have many thanks for the use of our theme music, which is the song Drop by Ketsa. You can find more of their music online at ketsa.uk. You can also find Date These Guys online on Twitter and Instagram at Date These Guys, or visit datetheseguys.org. If you have questions for the podcast or want to be a wealthy sugar parent, send an email to datetheseguys@gmail.com. If you're looking to make an impact in the world, this show strongly recommends Planned Parenthood, a nonprofit organization that provides reproductive health care in the United States. Planned Parenthood provides birth control, long-acting reversible contraceptive implants, clinical breast examinations, pregnancy screenings, prenatal care, testing and treatment for sexually transmitted infections, and abortions. They also do great work for those who are lower income. 4/5 of their clients are at or below 50% of the federal poverty line. Both Joel and Naomi are monthly donors to Planned Parenthood. We hope you will be too.